Welcome back to our channel, where we share updates and untold stories inspired by life behind palace walls. Quick note before we begin. This is a work of fiction for entertainment. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. Now imagine this. At 6:15 a.m., the king stands motionless at a high window, breath clouding the glass, watching two silhouettes drift through the dew. His queen and the one courtier he trusts most. They know exactly where the cameras don't reach. Their laughter rises like birdsong in the cold, and with it the first crack appears in the crown. If you love tense palace intrigue with peeling lacquer secrets and impossible choices, tap like, subscribe, and stay with me to the end. We're going deeper than morning mist. It begins the night before, with a mistake so small it feels harmless. Two identical phones in royal blue leather, laid side by side on the desk beneath a green-shaded lamp. The king picks up the wrong one, thumb already sliding to wake the screen, expecting memos and briefing notes. Instead, a single message blooms in soft gray bubbles from a contact marked only by an initial and a heart. I miss you. Same time tomorrow? The Rose Walk, before His Majesty's day begins. The words are simple, the implications are not. He scrolls. Months of attentive language, careful arrangements that thread themselves between state dinners and audiences, meetings concealed in plain sight. Each exchange is a tiny match. Together they set a life ablaze. Sleep becomes performance. The king lies beside a woman who breathes evenly, whose hand turns instinctively toward him in the quilted dark, and realizes this is the worst kind of betrayal, the kind that hides in the ordinary. Dawn arrives pale and unforgiving. He stands at the window, gaze locked on the east terrace, and waits. The first figure appears. His chief private secretary, the architect of his days, the man who can recite his calendar by pulse and minute. Then the queen, unhurried, wrapped in silk the color of late peaches. They meet with the ease of long practice. There is no urgency, no clumsy guilt, just the quiet choreography of people who believe they're invisible. He watches the small things first. The way their steps align, the glances that land a fraction too long, the way she laughs at something whispered, head tipping back, throat bared to the thin sun. That laugh snaps something inside him that statecraft cannot teach you to mend. What follows is a day split cleanly in two, the public one and the real one. In the cabinet room the king's voice is measured, his questions crisp. In the marrow everything shakes. The private secretary glides in and out with folders tucked beneath his arm, placing briefings just so, anticipating requests before they're formed. Admiration curdles into nausea. The queen attends a planning meeting and thanks the secretary, on the record, for his precision. It lands like a slap disguised as a flower. When the door closes, there is a moment in which he almost says it all, and then the moment passes because he is a sovereign and sovereigns must choose their moments like surgeons choose instruments. By dusk, choice feels like a wound that needs cleaning. The king calls in the head of royal protection, a woman known for her ice water pulse and her refusal to be dazzled by gold braid. He asks for an off-books inquiry, hands trembling only once, when he says the name. She does not flinch. She asks for authority to surveil, to pull camera footage from blind corridors, to trace disposable numbers and shell payments that flow like underground water. He says yes to everything. He has stopped being a husband in a private grief. He has become a guardian of a crown with rot in its timbers. Surveillance is patient work. For 48 hours it gathers threads. A pattern of pre-dawn walks, a shadowed side door at a country residence, the loop geometry of a carriage courtyard never covered by lenses. Texts are reconstructed, devices mapped. A clearer picture resolves and it's worse than anyone wants. This was never just romance. Too many encrypted messages, too many missing blocks in the schedule, and then the money-thin rivers feeding a dark lake. Offshore accounts that do not belong to the courtier begin to breathe on paper. Numbers that do not belong anywhere near a palace pulse beneath faceless holding companies. The phrase national security enters the room like a draft, and every candle in the king's chest gutters. What happens in the air later is branded into memory because altitude strips everything of vanity. The king and queen sit opposite each other in a private cabin, engines thudding a low, relentless hymn. He says a name. She goes still, porcelain tipped with grief. Tears come fast, the kind that are too heavy to perform. She speaks of solitude and invisibility, of being seen and heard by someone who made her feel necessary. It is both devastating and insufficient. He has loved her long enough to understand how hunger distorts judgment. He has worn the crown long enough to know that intention doesn't blunt consequence. He looks out at clouds that look like continents and realizes for the first time that love stories can be used as weapons, that the weapon is effective precisely because the love was real. The arrest is swift and quiet because that is how you remove rot without letting the roof fall in. Plainclothes officers take up positions at 9 sharp. Doors that always swing open begin to resist. In the private secretary's office, a warrant is presented, the law recited, a pair of cuffs produced with an absence of drama that makes everything worse. There is no scene, no indignation. Just a sliver of something like relief passing over a practiced face, as if the second life has finally run out of road. In a study down the hall, the king stares at his hands until they stop looking like his hands. He asks for a status. He receives 3 words, "We have him." It does not feel like victory. Feels like a kind of death. Now the difficult part. Letting the machinery grind while pretending the music hasn't changed. State banquets. Investitures. Hospital openings with teddy bears and amateur brass bands. The monarchy runs on stamina and theater. The king supplies both, even as the camera finds the new stillness behind his eyes. The queen appears when she must and smiles the kind of smile that costs blood. She has become, overnight, a cautionary tale in diamonds. In private, their lives run on parallel tracks, crossing where duty requires. There is kindness in those crossings and a vast, echoing absence in everything else. People imagine that what breaks a sovereign is scandal. It isn't. It's the small reminders. The rose walk viewed from a window at first light. A calendar that arrives without annotations in a hand he had trusted for 15 years. The particular gravity of a crown lifted onto his head on a feast day, the faint scent of beeswax and old velvet rushing up, and with it the knowledge that no amount of ceremony can keep a human heart from cracking along its oldest fault. And yet, stay with me here, there is also this, the work. It is unfashionable to admit, but service saves people more often than it traps them. The king returns to hospitals and barracks and village greens, and finds himself steadied by other people's ordinary courage. He spends an extra 5 minutes in a rehab ward. He stands in the rain while a cadet band butchers a march and laughs on purpose until it turns real. He writes, in his own hand, a note to the protection chief that contains only 2 sentences. "Thank you. Keep going." As for the queen, redemption when it arrives never looks like absolution. It looks like accountability. She steps back from the front row. She sits with charities that do quiet, unfashionable work and says very little. There are apologies that matter only because no one hears them. There are lessons that lodge like stones behind the ribs. In another story, she would be exiled to a house in the country, and the cameras would feed for months. In this one, she remains where she is most uncomfortable, inside the frame doing the work with no promise that the crowd will ever cheer. What remains after a palace storm? A country that prefers its fairy tales tidy. A family with new scars. A sovereign who understands, perhaps for the first time, that a crown is neither armor nor mercy, only a burden designed to be carried in public without complaint. Power doesn't prevent humiliation. It magnifies it. But it can, if you let it, teach you the strangest kind of grace. Continuing. If you made it this far, drop Rose Walk in the comments so I know you're one of the faithful. Do you think a monarchy can survive wounds like this if its people see nothing but steadiness? On the surface? Or is transparency the only way through? Tap like, subscribe for more royal thrillers and deep dives, and tell me what moment hit you hardest. The midnight message, the dawn window, or the sound of the cuffs in a wood-paneled room. Until next time.